When landfills fill, where will the trash go? Landfills have a lot of recyclable materials in them. This leads to the creation of more landfills, which waste space. Paper makes up 35% of the materials in landfills, meaning if that paper were recycled, then there would be 35% less trash. This is just one of the many recyclable materials that end up in landfills. All paper comes from trees, and by recycling paper, it helps save trees so less have to be cut down. Even though the trees are grown for the specific use of making paper, the land could be used for agriculture instead. Trees are necessary for clean air, so by recycling paper, it keeps the air cleaner. Recycling paper also keeps the ground and the earth clean because it keeps the paper out of landfills. See how she sorted her paper, plastic, and trash? This is what everyone should be doing to help decrease waste in landfills. Many people don't know, but items like these are actually recyclable. You can tell by the recycling symbol on them.
Some non-recyclable materials are wax paper, carbon paper, plastic-coated paper, paper towels, tissue paper, styrofoam, plastic bags, and plastic liners.
Materials that can be recycled are paper, magazines, books, cans, cardboard boxes, glass bottles, cereal containers, Post-its and printer paper, tinfoil, and paper bags. People think recycling is expensive, but really it is cheaper than incinerating things and creating new landfills. Recycling is good for the economy because money is saved from evading future disposal of materials. Since landfills have limited space, by recycling you can save space for materials that cannot be recycled. Creating new landfills is expensive and laborious. If people do not recycle, there will be more landfills, which will be further and further away from each other, adding transportation costs. Also, new landfills cost more than old ones, so by using old landfills longer, these costs are avoided. There are consequences when you don't recycle. When you don't recycle recyclable materials, they go into landfills. When those items go into landfills, they can eventually end up in the ocean, causing pollution and unhealthy wildlife. When humans eat the marine life from the ocean, they consume the toxins from the pollution. Also, the pollution caused by the incineration factories gives off lots of gas and pollution, meaning the air we breathe is becoming more and more toxic, causing harm to our bodies. On top of that, the chemicals eventually seep into the soil and pollute the plants and water in the area. Okay, so my first question is, what things do recycling plants recycle?
Okay, so I'll explain. Our company name is Active Recycling, and what plants recycle depends on what line of business they are in. Certain recyclers like us buy all types of material. We buy all types of paper and all types of metal. We buy some types of plastic and also some types of glass. The list is very long of what we buy and what we recycle. Some recycling companies are specifically focused on one type or various types of material. For example, there's certain companies, all they want is stainless steel, or maybe all they want is glass or plastic. And they're really focused on that one material type. So when it comes to recycling, there's different types of recycling companies like us who collect various materials, and then there's some that, they specify certain types that they really are after.
Okay, thanks. So how are things recycled?
It depends on the material type. Paper, because it's fiber-based, is pulped. And our business, we're suppliers to all the paper mills, metal smelters, and glass factories. So what we do is we prepare the material as much as we possibly can for the end user, so they can recycle it. But once it gets to the plant, they have specific procedures on how they recycle. I can't really speak for them, but I've been into paper plants where they pulp material. They'll basically take paper that's used, like your newspaper, your cardboard, and they'll mold. The best way to describe it is they make it almost like into a smoothie. They pulp it down with water. Some of them actually have to use chemicals, but I know that they're trying to get away from that to be more environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
And once the paper is liquefied, they basically reprocess it into new fiber, and they can make new boxes or new types of paper out of it. So that's just an example of how paper is recycled. Glass has to be brought to thousands of degrees and smelted, and then metal as well needs to be, what we do is we cut the metal down into small pieces, and sometimes it's then even shredded into even smaller pieces until it's at a point where they can melt it, and then they make new metal out of it. Our recycling business doesn't do any of that. That's for the factories. We're pretty much collecting and then setting everything up for the factory.
I see. So how does recycling help the earth?
Many ways. Of course, you save resources. For example, trees. For paper, obviously, you need trees. But if you recycle the paper, of course, you can make different types of paper products, insulation. There's various products. Recycling is simply the reuse, putting an old resource to new use. New products could have a percentage of recycled material, or they could be up to 100% recycled material. So some of the recycled paper that you may buy for your school could have a small percentage of actually post-consumer paper, which could be like your old homework assignment. Some of the materials post-industrial scrap, which is when the factories are making new paper, they even generate scrap paper because they cut out the paper that they're sending to your office supply stores and so forth. So there's post-consumer and there's post-industrial recycling. And how it helps the earth is we basically save that resource. If it's paper, we're saving trees. If it's aluminum, we're saving bauxite. If it's steel, we're saving ferrous materials from the earth. And these are materials that are not renewable, so that's how we're helping the earth. I mean, there's a limited amount of bauxite in the earth. Trees happen to be renewable. You can plant them, but they take a long time, of course, to grow. So that's really how we're helping the earth as consumers. Unfortunately, we overconsume, I think, at a rate that eventually could catch up. And so if we don't start recycling or keep recycling, because many of us obviously are recycling, we're basically depleting all of our resources.
Yeah. So where can people buy these recycled products?
You can buy recycled products from pretty much the big stores to small stores. I mean, I go to Office Depot myself, and I try to buy as much recycled paper as I can, as opposed to using virgin paper, which has never been recycled. And so most of your big box retailers, some people are on a small scale trying to make a difference. Even jewelers are using recycled metals. They're melting down silver. They're melting down different metals. And so in small areas, people are recycling, and in big ways, people are recycling. What we recycle, like I said, is scrap metal, like even your used refrigerator, your old stove, dishwasher. From construction, there's a lot of metal that they generate. We recycle that. And, as far as where you can buy the recycled products is hardware stores. Like if people are looking to do construction, they can buy metal that's been reprocessed. Cars, automobiles. A lot of automobiles today are made with recycled metal and recycled plastics. And it's quite amazing. I believe I sent you some statistics. At least 75% of the automobile is recyclable. And you can pull a lot of good data offline or in their science books. But pretty much a lot of businesses are now focusing on recycling, or at least using a percentage of recyclable material in their products.
Thank you.
But did you have a specific question about like where to buy certain types of
No,
products, or you're just curious?
just generally, yeah. And
Okay.
so how does recycling use less energy than harvesting new materials from the earth?
This is a good question. Okay, so when we were talking about why it's good for the earth, because basically we have limited amount of resources. When they're mining to get bauxite or different metals out of the earth, it takes a tremendous amount of not only manpower but machinery. So you're expending a lot of fossil fuels and diesel and so forth just to mine out the raw material. Then once you get the raw material, you got to do something with it. So you got to take it to a refinery and basically make something out of it. And so usually, for example, with aluminum, they make ingot. So they'll take raw bauxite, they'll make aluminum blocks, and then they need to find someone who's going to use the aluminum. So let's just say Coca-Cola. You know, they're selling tons and tons of cases of Coca-Cola. They need the aluminum for the can. So they then take ingot and then they make it into rolls. They take the rolls and they stamp them into cans, and then before you know it, they end up in the vending machine at your school. So how recycling uses less energy is rather than go through that big step of mining the aluminum from the earth, I say aluminum, but it's, you know, different minerals like bauxite. Instead, you basically recycle your can, and it's it's a renewable resource. You basically take the can and you smelt it into rolled aluminum sheet, and they stamp out new cans. It basically cuts a big step out of the process. And I think what people fail to realize when they don't recycle is it takes a tremendous amount of transportation to get these materials from the source, which could be the mine, all the way to the factory here in Los Angeles. Because we don't have aluminum here in Los Angeles, so they got to mine it somewhere else, maybe even another country. And that's the interesting thing about recycling is people think about only the can itself, but the real interesting part about the process of manufacturing that can is how did it get to the factory? And it was from the earth. So that's basically my long answer.
Thank you. And my last question is, can people receive like small amounts of money for recycling certain materials?
Certainly. We buy all types of paper, and we buy all types of metal, and like I said, we do some glass and plastic as well. So just to give you an idea, newspaper today, if you were to bring all your LA Times to our recycling center, we pay you $115 a ton.
Wow.
$115 a ton. So if you think about it, if you guys ran a newspaper drive, for example, I'm just trying to do a little math here.
Yeah.
115 divided by 2,000 pounds. We're paying 5 3/4 cents for each pound of newspaper that you would provide us. And a school of your size could do about, let's just say, 3 tons. That could be $345 that we would pay you for 6,000 pounds of newspaper. Sounds like a lot, but believe it or not, if you take a stack of newspaper, it would weigh 20 pounds for like maybe a 10-inch stack.
Wow.
So my point is, not only is it good for the earth, but of course you can get rebates and get rewarded for your effort. So that's just an example of one type of material that we buy. We also buy like an old refrigerator. It's worth $220 per ton.
Wow.
And these prices change because our pricing is based on demand.
Yeah.
So as they're manufacturing, of course, more newspaper, the price will go up, and sometimes the price will go down. But with that said, you know, I've always seen some value in recycling.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for your time.